listening to Ken Hudnall. This is the Ken Hudnall Show. Coming to you from our studios right here in exciting El Paso, Texas. Gateway to the Old West and the most haunted city in the country. Well, today's August 25th, 237th day of the year. Only 128 days remain to the year's over with. Holidays observances. National Kiss and Make Up Day. Supposed to let go of all those petty grudges and drawn-out fights. National Whiskey Sour Day. National Banana Split Day. National Park Service Founders Day. Gravy Wrestling Championship. Now that's definitely something to look forward to. Well, what happened? National Secondhand Wardrobe Day. National Heroes Day. Late Summer Bank Holiday. This is a perfect opportunity to soak up the last of the summer sun. Let's see. Crayfish Party. Be Kind to Humankind Week. National Fishing Month. Fiesta de Vino, which goes on through Sunday, September 14th. It's a wine festival. Celebrates Madeira's world-renowned wine and captivates both locals and visitors. So during the grape harvest season, transform the island into a showcase of its cultural heritage. The festivities extend from Funchals streets to the serene vineyards of the rural areas. You can find something to drink no matter where you go. It's a Notting Hill Carnival. It's a vibrant rhythm, a lot of colorful parades. It's in West London. And it takes place every year. All the steel bands. And of course, you have the sight of elaborate outfits and mouth-watering aroma of Caribbean cuisine that wafts through the city. These sights and sounds are actually the essence of the Notting Hill Carnival, celebration of British West Indian community. Get some phenomenal food. Red Valley. Let's see what that is. And maybe well, I guess it's not going to cooperate this morning. Oh, there we go. It's a grape harvest festival celebrated across Georgia. It's a blend of hard work and celebration. During Red Valley, the connection between the people and nature is palpable. It's you can take part in grape picking and witness traditional winemaking. Then we got Belgian Beer Week, National Composites Week, Navasard, and National Aviation Week. Famous people born in the state: Blake Lively, Alexander Skarsgård, and Tim Burton. All right. Now let's see what interesting stories we have in the news. Maybe. Abrego Garcia, the one the Democrats want to make into a saint, has turned himself into ICE, facing deportation to Uganda after a lengthy legal battle, most of it paid for with your tax dollars. in order to make the Democrats happy. He's going to surrender, if he already hadn't, in the ICE office in Baltimore. And we'll see if he actually leaves the country. Well, strangely enough, 2.5 million people have signed a petition supporting the illegal immigrant truck driver who killed the 3 people in Florida. He's facing vehicle homicide charges after the Florida Turnpike collision killed 3 people. But some Looney Tune came up with this petition urging Florida officials to show leniency to Harhinder Singh. The petition, posted on the website change.org and addressed to the Florida Governor, Ron DeSantis, calls for both DeSantis and the Florida Board of Executive Clemency to re-examine the case against the 28-year-old. Since he has trouble speaking English, and when he took the test to get his license was only able to identify one sign, we should forgive. So what if he killed 3 people? There's plenty of people. But as an undocumented immigrant, you have to understand, in the eyes of the Democrats, he has more rights than American citizens do, which I have trouble with. He attempted, on the Florida Turnpike in Fort Pierce, to make a U-turn, driving a semi in an unauthorized area. A trailer jackknifed and collided with a minivan, killed all 3 of its passengers. And then he ran to Florida, from Florida to California on August 16th, where he was arrested and extradited back to Florida. Investigators determined that he and his passenger, Harhinder Singh, I think he's his brother, fled to Sacramento the day after the crash. Now, on Saturday, a Florida judge denied a bond to Singh, which is a shock to me, ruling he's an unauthorized alien and a substantial flight risk. And the county judge, Lauren Sweet, found probable cause for all 6 charges against Singh, classified them as forcible felonies under Florida law. Surprise, surprise. Well, President Trump has told Grassley to tell Democrats to go to hell over blocked judicial nominees in the Senate. The president has called the Senate's blue slip tradition an unconstitutional block on his appointment power. The president said his rights had been taken away from him in states that have just one Democratic United States senator. He's referring to his ability to nominate judges and U.S. attorneys, accusing the custom of essentially giving Democrats veto power over his nominees. Well, Chinese President Xi is being considered a rising red tide. Beijing has added naval power and missiles as U.S. forces remain overstretched across multiple theaters of operation. Even U.S. Space Commander issued warnings on China's growing threat in outer space. The philosophy right now in regard to how we're treating it is fiddle our own birds. While we're obsessing over Ukraine and the Middle East, the Chinese Communist Party is building the most formidable military challenge the U.S. has faced in generations. They're adding mass and reach and persistence across sea and air, missile, space, cyber, and AI. While our own forces are stretched thin, underfunded, and mismatched for the threat. Well, former Secretary of State under President Biden, Anthony Blinken, was asked to leave a New York beach by a lifeguard. The lifeguard enforced the beach closure as hurricane brought dangerous conditions. But you have to understand, being a former Secretary of State, he's above all that. Why? There we go. He should be allowed to do as he pleases because he was Secretary of State under President Biden. Now, frat hazing, deaths happen to good kids from good families. The man named Jim Piazza has led the federal Stop Campus Hazing Act after his son Timothy died in a hazing accident. I remember when I was in college and a lot of hazing went on. I was in a military fraternity. Mr. Piazza's son died during a 2017 fraternity hazing ritual at Penn State, and he warned students and parents of the ills of the practice in an interview with Fox News Digital. Said anybody could become a victim. His son Timothy was recruited to join the Beta Theta Pi chapter at the school in February 2017. Invited to a bid acceptance party where he and several other pledges were forced to consume vodka. Then they were forced to drink more hard liquor before competing in an alcohol obstacle course, which included beer pong stations and other stations where they had to drink varying forms of alcohol, wine bags, beer shotguns, and that type of thing. After the obstacle course was completed, you can see in the video all the individuals were pretty out of it. Then they all went to the basement of the fraternity house and continued on drinking. Different fraternity guys would hand them drinks and make them chug it and whatnot. Did not have a happy ending. Well, the Cracker Barrel situation is still playing out. One of the board members, it was discovered, is under fire for his work background. He turns out he has a long history of DEI. Gilbert Davada has run a diversity firm for 15 years and even worked at Disney, which was the epitome of DEI for a long time. His activity and supports led to the company's new logo and redesigned interior, with revelations about Cracker Barrel's embrace of far-left values. The Davila is 61, joined the restaurant's board in July 2020, also among its top individual shareholders. Conservative activist Robbie Starbuck called him out in a video criticizing the company's leadership. All the recent changes, the culmination of a years-long campaign to cater to the far left. Well, the far left are vocal, and they throw their weight around, but they're not the main audience that goes to places like Cracker Barrel. I went to the very first one. It opened up in a gas station in Tennessee years ago. Loved it ever since. Last time I went, though, due to their insistence on cramming everybody they could into the small spaces, I wound up with pneumonia. Hadn't been back since. Well, there's a book that came out by Andrew Lowney. It's called Entitled. It explores the Prince Andrew, the disgraced Duke of York's relationship with the late Jeffrey Epstein. According to what was written, that friendship was fueled by sex and money. The this explosive new book about the disgraced Duke of York. As I say, it's entitled "The Rise and Fall of the House of York," based on years of investigation and interviews with hundreds of sources. Aims to examine the late Queen's favorite son and his relationship with Epstein. According to what was written in the book, the reason Andrew and Epstein were such good friends are interested in the same stuff, basically money and sex. That's one of the main issues when you got entitled people like hereditary dukes and princes and what have you. Well, next Washington Post fact checker owns up to a poorly aged report, but he's still defiant. His name is Glenn Kessler. He insists that incompetence is behind botched reporting, not political bias. The political figures once dreaded being hit with a fact check, whether it's receiving Pinocchios in the Washington Post or earning Lie of the Year by PolitiFact. Fact checker industry used to carry a lot of weight with large parts of Americans across all political stripes. But times have changed, according to now former Washington Post fact checker Glenn Kessler. He suggested he and his fact checking colleagues are on their heels in his final piece for the paper. It was entitled "The Fact Checker Rose in an Era of False Claims, Falsehoods Are Now Winning." He says social media platforms allow falsehoods to spread faster, and the rise of Donald Trump, who we referred to as a fact checker's dream and nightmare, has eroded the expectation politicians stay close to the truth. Like so many others, the source of all evil, according to him, is Donald Trump. And yet, more often than not, when you look at what Trump has said, he's absolutely correct. Basically, he calls it like he sees it, and the liberal left has a meltdown every time he does. Well, interestingly enough, we're finding more forgotten human habitations as we try to modernize what's going on. An ancient Roman apartment building was found underneath the public square while they were doing a subway construction. This discovery was near Victor Emmanuel II's monument. Reveals a complex history spanning multiple eras. The Italian archaeologists recently gained a rare insight into life during ancient Rome. They found a multi-story apartment building built decades before the birth of Christ. The discovery was announced August the 4th. Construction crews were digging in Rome's Piazza Venezia at the time as part of Metro Line C's subway project. Officials say the structure spanned several eras of Italian history, as early as the end of the Republic period in the 1st century BC. The site also contains homes from the Roman Imperial era. That's the 1st through the 4th centuries AD. Well, the modern palaces were destroyed in the 19th and 20th century. So when you dig, you never know what you're going to find. All righty. Senator Ted Cruz of Texas, he has refused to answer any complaint that I've sent to him. Says Newsom ought to be really careful about the fights he's picking. Newsom thinks he is the political heir of his aunt, Nancy Pelosi. But I think he's going to get a bit of a surprise. Well, comedian Mark Maron says he's always had a problem with Bill Maher. Calls him desperate. Maron said he doesn't consider himself anti-woke like the liberal real-time host. Mark Maron is a stand-up comedian who, of course, believes his statements are actually things that people should live their life by. He's another podcaster. You know, the podcasting community arose in response to a lot of the silliness that mainstream media put into effect. Well, in Houston, 2 men showed up at a man's door, identified themselves as police, said they had a warrant and wanted him to open up the door. Well, he looked at them through his Ring camera, and they weren't police. He wound up shooting them. Turned out the warrant they were trying to serve was fake. If I'm not mistaken, both of them died. Yeah, he fatally shot both masked men after he deposed police officers. And they actually opened fire on the house first. He fired back, which I don't think they were anticipating. You never know when things like that are going to happen these days. Well, President Trump's D.C. security plan has revealed some surprising facts. It turns out that the D.C. officials are actually manipulating the crime data. President Trump's use of the National Guard in D.C. is becoming a model for saving America's cities. And this National Guard deployment led to massive arrests, including MS-13 gang members. Even though a vocal minority calls it a improper use of power, those arrests are actually making the city safer. He's deployed over 800 National Guard troops in Washington, D.C. alone. Now, the Democrats deny that there is a crime problem. They keep telling Americans crime is declining, but the reality on the ground exposes the lie. The Department of Justice is now investigating Washington, D.C.'s Metropolitan Police Department for manipulating crime data to present a rosy picture of public safety. And if a Democratic-run city like Washington, D.C. can lie in numbers in order to mislead residents, we may find the same thing in every other Democratic-run city. All right. Well, about conspiracy theories. Oh, no, there's a lot of them. Now, we've touched on some of the biggest in previous shows. I'm going to start out talking about the conspiracy theory that says that the moon landing was fake. Now, the world is filled with a lot of stories that seem absolutely unbelievable. Some people think there are big secrets about space. including the idea that humans never landed on the moon, or we've already set up a colony on Mars, or that there were secret Russian cosmonauts who vanished before anybody found out about them. We're going to talk about what I call the big three of space conspiracy theories. Now, a lot of people around the world watched in 1969, the Apollo 11 mission brought astronauts to the surface of the moon. In fact, it was one of the most famous events of the 20th century. A few years after that, people began saying the entire event was made up. They said the landing was actually filmed on a secret movie set. That was even part of the plot of a James Bond adventure. Most well-known argument suggests that the United States wanted to show it was winning the space race against the Soviets. So the moon landing was staged to make everybody think we'd succeeded in going to the moon first. Now, there are a number of main arguments that are usually thrown out to show that the moon landing was fake. Number one, the shadows and the lighting. Some folks noticed the shadows and photos from the moon landing looked a little strange. And they said if the only source of light was the sun, then the shadows looked different than what appeared on the screen. According to them, this means there had to have been extra lights like you'd find used in a studio. And in a lot of pictures of the astronauts on the moon, no stars were visible in the background. And doubters say the moon landing, if it actually happened, and if the sky was real space, there'd be stars seen. And they think the reason we can't see the stars is the landing was filmed on Earth, and putting stars in the backdrop would have just been too hard even for photo manipulation. And let's talk about the flag. I went to an event in Roswell years ago, back when I was politically acceptable and used to speak there. And the individual was holding forth on the fact that the American flag on the moon seems to move or wave as if there's a breeze. And they wonder how this is possible if there's no air on the moon. So that leads them to believe that there was actually a breeze inside the film studio where they filmed the moon landing. And then there's the issue about the radiation belt. According to some folks, a person can't pass through certain high radiation areas near the Earth safely. They believe the astronauts would have been harmed if they had traveled through that region. And since they weren't harmed, that leads doubters to think that the trip never happened. Well, in discussing the shadows, experts say that the moon's surface is very reflective, and the astronauts and their equipment can change how the shadows appear. And the ground is also uneven. And according to believers, all these factors can cause shadows to appear at different angles. And as for no stars being seen in the photos, well, the cameras used on the moon had specific settings that made it hard to capture faint objects like stars. The lunar surface and the astronaut suits were very bright in the sunlight, so the camera exposure was too short to show the dim stars. And as for the flag movement, the flag had a metal rod across the top to hold it out. And when the astronauts handled the flagpole, the cloth would wobble and look like it was moving in a breeze. But according to those who try to explain it all away, this was actually the result of the astronauts twisting the pole. And as for the radiation concerns, well, scientists say passing through the radiation belts is possible with proper shielding. And the astronauts didn't spend a long time in the zone, which, of course, lowered their exposure. Now, these responses I just gave you are shared by the scientific community to show that the moon landing was a real event. And there are a lot of pieces of proof, such as rock samples from the moon that match the moon's surface and independent tracking of the Apollo missions by other countries. So whether you believe it actually took place or not, there's a lot of evidence that shows that it did. Now, of course, as we see in many court actions, evidence can be explained in many fashions. In the El Paso courts, they just make it up. Now let's talk about the supposed hidden colony on Mars. You might wonder how people got the idea such a thing had taken place. Mars has always fascinated people because it's similar to Earth. It has ice at the poles, it has seasons and a day length not too different from ours. When the first images from Mars were sent back by probes, some people saw shapes in the rocks that seemed, to them, man-made. Others noticed unusual lights or changes in the soil. Over time, a theory arose that humans had already traveled to Mars in secret and built bases there. In fact, I saw a picture the other day from the rover, and it showed what purported to be a helmet sitting on the ground. Some folks claim these bases are run by government agencies or private groups, and they think these groups don't want the public to know about it. Some folks even say they served in secret programs on Mars, protecting the base or working with alien beings. Now, of course, stories like this are difficult to prove, but they keep appearing in books and online. Now, some of the reasons people believe there's a secret Martian colony, there are photos. Certain photos from Mars rovers that show rock formations that look like statues or tools. And of course, we have the real known example of the face on Mars, a landform in the Sedona region that looked like a human face in early images. Now, it's claimed that later on, clearer images show it's just a mesa with shadows. But if your job hinges on convincing people that they didn't see what they saw, quite often you'll lie. And I've had a lot of folks affiliated with NASA claim that the face on Mars was actually intentionally avoided by many of the Mars missions. Then, of course, we've got whistleblowers. A handful of individuals come forward saying they were part of a secret space program, and they claim advanced technology allowed people to travel to Mars as early as the 1970s. They also say that these missions found ways to build small colonies below the surface of Mars or in hidden craters. And then, of course, there's supposedly evidence of life on Mars. Some of these believers think NASA found evidence of living things on Mars and kept it secret. They claim the rovers don't share all their findings, and that certain images are hidden or even erased. Now, scientists generally say, now what is a scientist? Just as we have men that identify as women and women that identify as men, we've got people who think they're smarter than you who identify as scientists. But scientists generally say there's no proof that a secret colony on Mars exists. They say it would take a lot of money and staff and supplies and ongoing support to keep such a place running. And hiding it from the world would be nearly impossible. Experts also point out a lot of strange things seen in Martian photos are simply rocks or shadows. Our brains try to see patterns and shapes in what we see, which is called pareidolia. NASA and other space agencies have detailed plans to eventually send people to Mars openly. These plans involve huge rockets and advanced life support systems and new advanced technologies. Scientists say if we already had such bases, it wouldn't make sense to fund these new programs from scratch. I will point out that Project Horizon, which dates to 1968, calls for the building of bases on the moon under the Department of Defense. Still, the idea of a secret Martian colony sparks the imagination. Some even connect it with stories about aliens living under the Martian surface and working with certain groups on Earth. But without strong evidence, these remaining theories, while entertaining, don't have wide support. Of course, I would point out, just like with UFOs, or UAPs as they're called now, if the aliens came forward and did a news conference, people would still doubt it. Well, let's talk about stories I heard growing up about phantom cosmonauts. Back during the Cold War, the U.S. and Soviet Union raced to be the first to get into space. They launched satellites and animals and eventually people to prove who was the more advanced. Soviet Union started out strong by launching the very first human, Yuri Gagarin, into orbit in 1961. But then rumors started to circulate the Soviet Union sent other people into space before Gagarin, and a lot of those folks died. And the phantom cosmonaut theory says that before Gagarin's famous flight, there were other cosmonauts who went into space secretly. According to those that believe this theory, the Soviet Union hit any mission that failed. They didn't want to look bad. This was to protect the nation's reputation. Some stories say these lost cosmonauts died in orbit or died on the moon or even while testing new spacecraft. And those that support this theory point to strange recordings and radio signals that might have been voices calling for help from space. They also mention official records. It might have been altered, which leads them to think the truth was actually hidden. Well, let's look at the evidence in favor of such a theory. They're actually radio transmissions. Two Italian brothers known as the Giudica Cordiglia brothers claimed to have picked up signals from Soviet cosmonauts. They said they heard a woman speaking in Russian, sounded distressed, and she appeared to be dying. And these recordings, if real, might indicate that a secret mission was actually taking place. And some researchers say there are odd details in Soviet space records. They claim certain people's names appeared and then vanished. It suggests these people might have gone on a mission that ended badly, and the Soviet Union covered it up. And then there are reports that came out from former Russian officials. A few former Soviet officials said they knew of unreported space flights. Now, they rarely offer any proof, but they say the records were destroyed. And I've seen government cover-ups in action, and irreplaceable records have been destroyed in order to support these cover-ups. Well, the Russian government, most historians say that no such missions took place. Got the hiccups. They state that every Soviet cosmonaut's flight's on record, and the very idea of secret missions failing is untrue. Experts also examined the Giudica Cordiglia recordings and said they found no solid proof they were real. They said the speech on the tapes is not clearly Russian, and it might have been hoaxes or signals from some other sources. Still, some people remain convinced the Soviet Union had reasons to hide failed missions. They argue that covering up would help maintain the country's strong public image. Even though there's no accepted proof, the phantom cosmonaut story continues to fascinate people. It does bring to mind the mystery of space and how nations might keep secrets in order to look better than their rivals. Well, some theories upon which these conspiracy theories are based are, so we say, odd. From Secrets of Space, let's talk about the flat Earth conspiracy, even the hollow Earth, and even a conspiracy about an expanding Earth. You know, our planet's subject to endless wonder. Scientists tell us the Earth is shaped like a sphere. People have gone into space and taken pictures that show its curved surface, but there are still people who believe the Earth isn't a sphere at all. Others say the Earth is hollow and has hidden lands inside. And there are those who claim that the Earth is actually getting bigger. Well, these beliefs have a lot of supporters around the world. They question what most consider common facts. And in our study of conspiracy theories, we're going to start out looking at the flat Earth idea, and in the hollow Earth theory, and even the expanding Earth concept. Now, the idea the Earth might be flat is older than a lot of folks realize. In ancient times, some cultures believed the Earth was shaped like a disc. And as time passed, navigators and astronomers gathered proof that the Earth was a sphere, including the way ships disappeared over the horizon and how the shadows on the Earth changed during lunar eclipses. And you would think that is sufficient to prove the Earth is not flat. But even in this modern time, there's a movement of individuals who say the Earth is flat after all. Now, according to the flat disk model, the world is like a large flat disk with the North Pole at its center. They say Antarctica is a giant ice wall around the rim that keeps oceans from flowing off the edge. Some also believe there's a dome covering this flat disk. We refer to that dome as the sky, keeping everything inside. The sun and the moon move in circles under the dome, lighting different parts of the flat world. And when you start asking them what they base it on, these flat Earth supporters say space agencies like NASA lie about images of Earth as a sphere. They believe these images are computer generated and that the pilots and airlines work together to hide the Earth's true shape from the rest of us. They say that if the Earth was truly curved, people would be able to see that curve. Because their horizon appears flat, they think the Earth has to be flat. They also point out we don't feel the Earth spinning, even though scientists say the Earth rotates once every 24 hours. And they sometimes claim that certain flight routes of airplanes only make sense if the Earth is flat. Now, scientists respond by saying that the Earth is so large the curve is not visible to the naked eye at ground level. But when you go high enough in a plane or a spacecraft, the curve becomes visible. Also, ships moving over the horizon vanish from top to bottom, which lines up with the spherical Earth. And flat Earth believers struggle to explain how gravity works on a flat disk. According to mainstream science, gravity pulls toward the center of mass, which is best explained by a spear-shaped planet. Astronauts have taken a lot of photos and videos showing the Earth's spherical shape. These come from different space agencies around the world, not just one country. Very hard to fake all of them. In spite of the scientific explanations, the flat Earth theory is still a popular theory in some online communities. They trust their senses over scientific instruments or data. For this community, the simplest explanation is that the ground under their feet is flat, so the Earth has to be flat. And from the flat Earth, it's one short step to the hollow Earth. According to ancient legends that have been around for centuries, the Earth might be hollow. A lot of folk tales talk about underground worlds full of strange creatures. Some of these myths even mention entrances at the poles leading to vast lands inside the Earth. And this has inspired stories about hidden kingdoms and advanced civilizations living beneath our feet. A key point is the claim that There are huge openings at the North and South Poles. And some folks say satellites avoid taking pictures of these openings. Others think that there are secret government bases that guard these entrances. Some versions of this theory include a small sun at the center of Earth that lights and warms the inside world, allowing plants, animals, and even humans to live there. And people sometimes talk about great cities to be found inside the Earth where advanced beings or even lost tribes live. And there are stories of these beings being more powerful than us or even having mysterious advanced technology. Well, believers point to large cave systems around the world, saying that they're connected into a vast inner realm. And yes, there are cave systems that stretch on. In fact, beneath El Paso, there are underground tunnels that run for as much as 900 miles. I've talked to a number of people who've explored them extensively, and I've been in them a time or two. Some folks point to older flight paths over the North Pole that might have circled around a large hole. They also refer to accounts by polar explorers who mention unusual warm winds or changes in climate near the poles. And there are stories about odd lights in the sky, the polar sky that is, that some think come from the internal sun shining outward. Of course, scientists say this is just the aurora caused by charged solar particles. And scientists say the Earth has layers, a crust, a mantle of hot rock, and a core made mostly of iron and nickel. And they've used seismic waves from earthquakes to study these layers, and they've concluded the Earth can't be hollow. The planet's mass and gravity measurements also match this layered model. Well, despite the evidence, hollow Earth theories still catch people's imagination. They appear in books and movies and online discussions, and some believers think the governments hide the truth for unknown reasons. And while these ideas have no acceptance among scientists, they do show how people still look for hidden realms in unlikely places. And from the hollow Earth, let's talk about the conspiracy theory there's an expanding Earth. Now, this theory says that the Earth was once much smaller. Over time, it grew larger, causing the continents to move apart. And people believe in this theory say that plate tectonics is wrong or even incomplete. They don't think continents drift on large plates that move around. Instead, they believe the size of the Earth itself is increasing. Well, one of the arguments in favor of this theory is the fit of the continents. Continents like South America and Africa fit together like puzzle pieces. While mainstream science says this is because they were once joined in a supercontinent called Pangaea, expanding Earth believers say the continents covered more of the surface of a smaller planet in the past. And standard plate tectonics has areas where plates move under each other. It's called subduction. And areas where plates move apart, such as spreading ridges. Some expanding Earth supporters argue there's not enough subduction to match how much new crust is created at ridges. They suggest the Earth is gaining mass or volume from unknown sources or processes. And sometimes they say cosmic dust or energy from the sun or other factors might be causing the Earth to swell. My question to them is, if it swells enough, is it going to explode? Well, scientists, and I use that term loosely, point to plate tectonic evidence. They've gathered many types of data, such as GPS measurements, to show how plates move. Scientists can measure how fast continents drift and how new crust forms at mid-ocean ridges. And subduction zones have also been observed. Now, there's been no significant increase in the radius of the Earth. Measurements of Earth's size don't show any meaningful growth over time. Satellites and careful observation confirm the Earth's radius stays about the same. Now, the Earth does gain some cosmic dust every day, but this is a very small amount. Not nearly enough to cause the planet's crust to crack or expand in a way that moves continents around. Most geologists see the expanding Earth theory as an outdated idea. They say the modern understanding of tectonics explains how continents can move without the planet growing in size. Still, the expanding Earth theory remains in some groups question mainstream science. They think there's a whole lot more to the story than what textbooks teach, and certainly that many of us have thought that. Well, from the expanding Earth, let's talk about reptilian overlords and human cloning facilities and even synthetic people. Some conspiracy theories sound strange. When people talk about powerful beings that aren't human or entire buildings full of mysterious experiments, it can be a little hard to know what to think. We're going to talk about 3 of these ideas. The notion that shape-shifting reptilians control the world. I point you to the writings of David Icke. The fear that humans are being cloned in secret labs, and the belief that some individuals walking among us aren't human at all, but are created forms known as synthetic people. Now, a lot of scientists and researchers say these ideas don't have any proof, but there are still groups who trust in these stories. We're going to talk about these ideas and note some of the main points. Let's start out talking about the reptilian overlords. This theory has grown in modern times, mainly through various books and online sources. According to this idea, there's a hidden group of reptilian beings who can take on human form. These beings could come from a distant planet or another dimension, or even from ancient Earth. And supporters of this theory believe that these lizard-like creatures have placed themselves in high positions in government, the media, and other areas of power. Their goal, according to believers, is to control human society without being noticed. In fact, I'll refer you again to David Icke, who claimed that Queen Elizabeth was a shape-shifting reptilian. Now, some claim that stories of dragons or snake gods and myths worldwide are actually based on ancient encounters with these reptilian beings. They think such myths are clues that a reptilian race interacted with humans in the past, gave them knowledge, and possibly shaped human history. Now, there are certain basic main beliefs to this theory. One of the biggest points is the claim that reptilians can look fully human. They might occasionally show signs of their true appearance, like slit pupils or scaly skin, but most people don't notice these things. Some folks have tried to find evidence in videos pointing to strange eye movements or glimmers they say reveal the reptilian's true form. Believers say that many world leaders, celebrities, and wealthy families are actually reptilians. They argue these beings control financial systems and the media and the governments. Sometimes large gatherings or important summits are said to be meetings where reptilians decide how to guide humanity. And there's also the idea that reptilians feed off negative human emotions like fear and anger or even blood. Some stories go so far as to say that these creatures want to keep humans in a state of conflict so they can feed off the chaos. Now, supporters share video clips of politicians or speakers with odd eye reflections that look like reptilians' eyes. Experts say such effects can be caused by lighting or camera glitches. A number of cultures have legends involving snakes or dragon gods. Believers link these old tales to a grand story about the reptilians who arrived on Earth long, long ago. And some suspect that certain hand gestures and signs or logos might be hidden marks of reptilian rule. Scientists and most people dismiss the idea of reptilian overlords. They say there's actually no real proof, and that shape-shifting breaks all known laws of biology. Others point out that powerful leaders can cause harm or do bad things on their own without being part reptile. I've known a number of folks who have been referred to as snakes. That doesn't mean they are. A lot of critics argue that these stories often arise from fear of the unknown or distrust of authority. Overall, critics say if reptilians existed, there'd be strong and clear evidence, like biological samples and reliable photos or direct contact that can be tested. So far, none of these have appeared. But in spite of this, the idea of reptilians in control remains popular in some circles. It stirs up talk about who's really in charge and whether we can trust the people at the top. For some folks, the reptilian story is a way to explain why major events happen in the world, why normal citizens sometimes feel powerless. And from reptilians, let's talk about the concept that humans have been cloned. Now, cloning is a process by which genetic material from a living being is used to create an identical copy. Most famous real-world example is Dolly the sheep, cloned in the 1990s. Since then, scientists have cloned other animals, including dogs and cats and even monkeys. A lot of countries have strict rules about cloning, especially when it comes to humans. Some conspiracies say that in secret labs, far away from public view, scientists are cloning humans. They believe these clones are used for different purposes, like creating a private army, replacing important figures, or conducting tests that are too risky for normal people. Now, why might there be human cloning? Well, one idea is that cloned humans could have their organs replaced. Some people believe in this conspiracy, say that wealthy individuals or hidden groups want a steady supply of healthy organs. They think illegal labs grow clones to certain ages and then use them for surgery. Another idea suggests if a powerful person becomes ill or dies, a clone might take that person's place. This will prevent the public from knowing the truth. In some stories, clones are grown from birth, then rapidly aged or trained to copy the mannerisms of the original person. And then there's the theory of secret soldiers. Armies made up of cloned troops who follow commands without question. These super soldiers will be stronger and faster and less emotional than normal humans. This particular conspiracy claims these clones might be grown in large numbers in underground bases or on unknown islands. And those who believe in these theories even think they have possible locations. Some claim that human cloning labs are hidden under military bases or in remote facilities. They say these places are off limits to the public, making it easy to hide unethical work. Another argument is missing people might be taken to labs to be used for cloning experiments. Every year, 100,000 plus people in this country alone disappear. No rhyme, no reason. They're just gone. And then there's the odd behavior in public figures. Believers point to times when a celebrity or a politician seems to act out of character. They say these slips happen because the clone's not perfect and has trouble copying the original person's personality. Scientists say that human cloning is much harder and more complicated than cloning animals. Humans have complex brains, and the success rate for animal cloning is already low to begin with. Many attempts fail, leading to health problems or short lifespans. Also, the ethics of human cloning are heavily debated in the scientific community. There have to be large groups of skilled people involved, and it would be almost impossible to keep a project like that hidden. And finally, we have the theories about synthetic people. Now, they're a different concept from clones. They're not cloned from human DNA in the usual way. Instead, they might be artificial life forms or robots designed to look and act like real humans. Some stories about synthetic people say they have synthetic skin and advanced mechanical parts. Others suggest they're grown in labs using engineered tissue. Believers say these beings are used to replace real humans or are too hard to control. Others think synthetic people are created for tasks that are too dangerous or delicate for normal people. Some even claim that certain public figures are actually synthetic, designed to influence large groups. Claims in support of these theories are the strange speech or behavior. Videos that show a person with stiff movements or a blank stare are sometimes pointed to as proof the person is not entirely human. And on that note, we come to the end of today's show. We'll be back tomorrow. And once again, we'll be talking about more conspiracy theories. Until then, this is Ken Hudnall for The Ken Hudnall Show saying have a truly great evening.